Having a Gas is the podcast that chats to the great and the good of the creative industries, and in particular finds out what makes great music for film, for TV, for commercials, for cooking to, for dancing to, f***ing to, and more. Today I'm having a gas with Ben Sainsbury, the CEO of Marion Surgical. Whilst today Ben's business provides surgical training using revolutionary VR technology, in a past life Ben was a Hollywood filmmaker working with Peter Dinklage on his first feature, Jailbait. I thought it would be good to start by getting an overview of who you are and what you're doing here. As in, I know that you're originally from Canada, but you moved over to the UK. Tell us what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, so I moved to the UK December of 2019. And my company, Marion Surgical, we're building virtual reality surgical simulation. So we came over to get with the NHS, and also we happened to get an Innovate UK grant to work on a pre-visualization tools for video games and movies. So basically how to plan out your movies in VR before you go and shoot single frame of film.
These are two pretty different marketplaces in terms of trying to get through to the NHS, but also try and get through to effectively motion picture feature film. Is the thing that binds them together so your passion for virtual reality?
It's the passion for virtual reality, but actually one of the things we're doing with the simulation for surgical is to basically define what a expert user is on the surgical simulation. So we've got this really detailed haptics, really realistic haptics. So when a surgeon uses the tool, it gives a line. So we're able to determine between expert and non-expert users. And that same line that we're using is used for mocap for the virtual reality surgical, or the virtual reality film previs tool.
So,
go ahead.
Are these two things feeding into each other then? You know, so one marketplace informs the other?
Yeah. So both of the R&D, the tool translates to both.
No, that's really cool. What got you into VR training for the medical community?
So I came from a film background. I went to USC. I got a master's at University of Southern California, working on screenplays, et cetera. And when the first virtual reality headset came out, which would have been, 2011, 2012, I bought the VR Mach 1 of the Oculus and just thought it was really cool, and just thought it was an extension of kind of open world, kind of the type of video games I like, those world games where you can kind of just explore another dimension, really appealed to me. So I started working on computer science, and I wanted a B2B solution just because it's so tough to crack a B2C solution. So I wanted a product that could be sold to businesses. So I built a cardiac stent prototype and showed it to a surgeon, and he encouraged me to get into urology. So my partner and I, we set up the company and started working on scratching his itch, which is a tool to help teach urology. And that has just kind of expanded from there.
So I was interested to pick up on, you said it's much, much harder to sell directly to the consumer as opposed to businesses. So to an idiot like me, why is that?
So when we're selling the surgical simulator, it's a much higher price point. We're selling to hospitals. I have experience selling to businesses. So along the way, I used to sell engineering software to hospitals. So I kind of know how to do that. And longer sales cycle, but more loyal customers. They have deeper pockets, and they're willing to spend on R&D. B2C, one time I made a prototype of a game, put it on Steam, which is the marketplace for video games, charged $1, just a nominal sum, and some, gamer somewhere in the States, I didn't respond to his email in eight hours. So he wrote this huge, scathing, that kind of thing. So it's like, really, dude, you spent $1 on this, and you're going to give me a hard time. So that's what I mean. That's the difference between the two. It's like one of my mentors in Hollywood once said, in terms of the movie business, you can make a killing, but you can't make a living. So the idea there is, it's a hit business. If you have a hit, then everything's great. If you don't, then you got to find another way to make money.
And because you hear about nominal sums paid for screenplays for first-time writers that are in the tens of thousands. We're talking the rare 1 in a million legend story like Tarantino sells Reservoir Dogs to whoever.
Sure.
And it's like, I don't know, tens of thousands or a few $100,000. And so that gets young people's kind of twitching and go, well, I could make that much money in one go. But effectively, that's what you're saying is the wisdom in Hollywood is it's in one go, and that's your lot usually.
Or it's the one go is hard to get, because I think once you get the one go, then more work will follow.
Yeah.
But the trick is to get that one. So you got to figure out what you're going to do while you're waiting for the hit. So
let's go back to your time in Hollywood, because that was your life, wasn't it? You were waiting for the hit.
That's right. Yeah.
So for people who don't know you, what were you doing in Hollywood, and what was the project, and take us through the absolute graft that you were going through to try and get the project over the line.
Yeah. So the project you're talking about is Jailbait, which was a movie that I wrote in a screenplay class that was taught by Stephen Mazur, who wrote Liar Liar, and basically he encouraged us to have something that was high concept. So that was my high concept movie. So at the time, it was living the Hollywood life, going to parties, always pitching, hustling. I did cross paths with a few rock people and hangers-ons and that kind of thing, and doing whatever it takes to get the movie made. But at some point you just cut it off, and you gotta figure out another way.
What was that moment for you?
The moment for me, there was one time where I had, basically there was a musician that had a lot of money from his family business, and he wanted to basically, we were talking about his band being showcased in the movie as a way to kind of promote his band, and that was the kind of quid pro quo for putting up the money for the movie. And I remember going to a party, and he really wanted at the time. They have a thing in Hollywood called pay for play, and pay for play is where basically a band pays to be on a bill to play music at a club, but for the outside observer, it looks like you're hired to play at that night at the gig, like it's a gig, but you're really paying for the gig. And I think it was Motley Crue that he was really into, and Motley Crue, or the lead singer of Motley Crue, and one of his side bands was going to play. And so he was trying to get Motley Crue to this party. And I was looking around, and I'm just like, it felt like at the time it was just like I sort of hit rock bottom with all these sort of people that were just hanging around to kind of, sponge off of stuff, me being one of them. And I was like, you know what? This isn't happening. This is all this scene. I got to get out of here, because this is too much, And then the whole thing with I was there for the last. I've had a couple of goes at being in Hollywood, and that particular period of time was about 6 years. And you go to restaurants and stuff, and it's like a cycle of people that come in. It's like all the best looking people from the world that maybe have that are troubled show up in Hollywood, spend 2-3 years, end up waiting on tables, then they leave. And then there's a new batch. And after a while, you just kind of sit back and you kind of see this trend. And I don't know. There's just things like that, where the desperado scenario, where the thing is you meet people and you're friends with people, and you might be with the wrong people, but you can't just, that's sort of your scene. And so I was hanging around with the guy who directed, X-rated movies, scene in worlds. I remember we were in Las Vegas, and we took mushrooms, and we were at in Caesar's Palace at the little bar scene there, and just I remember looking around at the at the porn stars, and there was some basketball people there, and it just looked like I just saw like Satan's wings. It just was like a bad trip. I was like, this is getting bad. And then I ended up taking a train back to LA because he ended up scoring. Ron Jeremy agreed to be directed in a movie by him, so he couldn't get me a ride back as promised. So I took the train, and just taking the train back from LA from Vegas is just like, whoa, like I am in a dark world, and I don't know how to dig myself out except to leave and then maybe come back under a new context.
Yeah, which it sounds like is in the pipeline, getting involved in the CGI side of the world. But there's a few really interesting images that you conjured up there, and one was I'd never considered Hollywood being like a cruise ship where the staff are always different on seasonal shifts. So are you saying you've got all these people who are waiting in the wings? I'm going to be Brad Pitt. I'm going to be Emma Stone. And of course, I think it's Emma Stone is in La La Land as a Starbucks waitress who becomes a star. Yeah. And so all of them are waiting for that moment. And because if they're the one, they are going to make it big and they're done. But for most of them, it's not going to happen. That's right. And they have an entourage. So their entourage gets carried up with them as well. So a lot of those people have like all these circle of friends that, hey, I was there then. And they're the ones that usually spend all their money, hanging around. And so anyway. you were on one of these. So you were on these pay to play events, and you felt like it was almost as if a mirror was held up to you, because I think if I understood you right, it sounded like this guy who's giving me the opportunity is just spending all of his energy this evening to make sure that it looks like it's a legit gig, so that this one pair of eyeballs will see it and maybe give him loads of money. Yeah, and it sounds like it might be happening under the scenes, but it's so obvious. It's like if you're at this Hollywood Hills party, as soon as the door opens, everybody stops talking and looks to see, is this person really important that's walking in, or okay, no, it isn't, and we're going to go back to like, it's just so transparent how just basic it is, really. You said you end up feeling like you're in a kind of a sea of empty vessels, just like, oh, no one here has their own thing. They're all trying to create the ideal persona for when the producer walks in and goes, you're the next guy, you're the next star. That's right. And wow. I was one of those people. So it wasn't like I can say I was a casual, observer, but I felt like at a time that I was one of the wolves on the hill, like just saying, okay, here comes, Betty Bo Peep off the bus. Like, okay, you start to feel that a little bit, especially with my buddy being in the adult film industry. So you get to, that's even another level lower. So you picture, here's that Hollywood scene we're talking about. There's the hills. And then there's the valley on the other side where it's the same game, but it's a little bit even more depraved, where it's like, well, that guy that's coming in to do the scene, he just got released from prison. And here's this, 18, this girl that just turned 18. And, they're having Starbucks cookies about to talk about, they're about to do a scene, and you're just like, okay. Wow. And meanwhile, you're in the valley, you're in some house that's been rented, and then you open the door and there's people driving to work and it's all normal. And then you go back in and it's like, So it was a different life. And while waiting in the wings, we as you know, because I know a little bit of the backstory already, we have to go through this. The star of your film was one of the, I'll say that again because I got an email interruption. Sure. The star of your film was one of the stars of tomorrow. It's today's star, Peter Dinklage. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So at the time I saw him a few times because we filmed my project. So I filmed like a bunch of my project over the weekends to put together like a demo. So he was in. So I saw him over a few periods of time. But the first time he was in a tent inside of a house in the Hollywood Hills. I remember I was there. He ordered vegetarian pizza. He's a vegetarian, and there we were under the Hollywood Hills. But he was living in a tent inside of So it was like he was, one of the hopefuls. And then the next time he started to get more famous. Then one of the most fun was when he had done The Station Agent, and I was introducing him to Hannah Hall, who
did a few scenes in the movie, and she was to be the lead. Anyways, it was like right about the time where he was about to peak. So we were at the Four Seasons Hotel in Hollywood, and it was a bunch of celebrities there because it was award season. And I was at the pool, and there's hobbits swimming in the water, and Paul Giamatti walking by, and it was like the big scene. And then Peter Dinklage's brother had rented a Mustang convertible. So we went out and got in the Mustang convertible, and as we were driving, he cranks Hot for Teacher. So, like the beginning of Hot for Teacher comes on, and there's people like literally in the bushes taking pictures of me who's in the front seat. And we drove out to the beach in Malibu, and I was like, okay, there's things like that I think only Hollywood can give you an experience, which is, there's a lot of adrenaline. It feels really cool. So another time we went to the Chateau Marmont to party with some friends. And as we pull up, I'm driving, and they're just like, no, man, like just, it's not your, then they see him. They're like, oh yeah, come on in. Let me valet. Just the access that, when your star is rising, this access opens up to you. Whereas it's a flip side of that Hollywood scene.
So you can see why I presume it turns people's head, and we're very critical of people who get to a certain level and their ego just transforming in a monumental way. But you're saying now you saw the other side of that coin, and it makes sense when all the doors are locked and then you're the person, you are the key code, all the doors open just for being you. You must feel like a god.
I think so. And, in fairness, like I pitched the movie. So Peter was committed, but then there came a point where I saw him at another Hollywood party. Actually, it was a Hollywood party. I met Meryl Streep, and I met Jennifer Jason Leigh, and there's a bunch of celebrities there. But he walked into that party, and I was there. I was like, oh, Peter, because, I'm pitching him being in my movie, and he was on the phone. He's just busy. I'm busy. And just, gave me like the Hollywood cruise by. It's
wow.
Like, because I think it's like, I don't want to be I'm now got these big projects. That thing sounds like a train wreck. I'm not attached anymore. So I felt like that was another time where I was like, you know what? Probably shouldn't be attaching his name to this project anymore.
Oh, wow. What you mean when it's like, I'm now the guy who does the Will Ferrell movie. I can't quite be seen to be in student films, respectfully.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Or just the Jailbait concept was a little bit risky, and, his star's rising, and there's paid productions, and I don't blame him. I mean, for every guy like me, he probably had 10 or I don't know, guys with hopeful projects where his name's attached. And frankly, you're using his name to get access. Like, oh, I've got this project here. It's another movie. Oh, Peter Dinklage is attached. Oh yeah, we meet on Tuesday? So all of a sudden you're, getting the gold dust is rubbing off you.
Yeah.
And then you feel a bit sleazy as well, because you're like, you know what? I haven't really talked to him in a few months. I don't even know if he's attached to this thing. So you hope that all of a sudden, at the time, Weinstein's like, yeah, we're going to do your movie. It's a classic. And everybody gives the reinforcement to Dinklage that this is a good project to be in. And then, oh, yeah, we were, I was attached all along kind of thing. But, yeah, there is that sort of risky moment. Because I did pitch it to, I think I even pitched it to Meryl Streep, to a bunch of people that, it was another funny thing, just on a side note. There's a band in Canada called The Tragically Hip. Which is a really famous Canadian band. They haven't really broke out, and I don't know if you guys have heard of them in the UK.
No, but I'll make it my business to listen to them.
Anyway, they're a really great band, and the lead singer was a really good guy. He died of cancer. But the drummer was a buddy of my sister's, and I went to the Tragically Hip show in LA with my sister, and she got us backstage, and this guy, Johnny Fay, who's the drummer, really cool guy, he met me in the guise where all this Hollywood stuff was happening for me. And so it was like in that context. And then he has a house in Bermuda. He was flying to Bermuda, and I happened to be in a magazine called, he was flying Air Canada, Maclean's, which is equivalent, like it's like a significant magazine. Like, I don't know what the UK is, like a Time magazine. And he pulled it up from the airplane and was reading, and there I was, because they did a little profile on my movie. So he thought in his mind, oh yeah, Ben Sainsbury's the next biggest, because all the context that we had met each other, but in reality, I was, basically just a hustler.
And then you realize why in South Park, the Canadians are pictured in a very specific light. It's like the idea that for a second you were the A-list star of Canada.
That's right. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I also, have you, before we dive into some music, I know you're a comedy fan. And when you were talking about the, understanding the mindset of people who become massive stars, I don't know, have you seen Bill Burr's routine about Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tiger Woods and these people who famously are unfaithful with their spouses?
No, I haven't.
I'll send you the link. It's worth watching. But, the basic message he says is, if you're like a normal person criticizing that, it's like, do you think you've ever faced temptation at that level? And you think, right. If you finished a round, if you were Tiger Woods, do you think if, in his position, you finished a round of golf and there was a busload of supermodels waiting for you, do you think you'd go, sorry guys, got to go home to the wife? And so obviously we're not condoning that kind of marital conduct, but it's a good point to say that you've been up close with those kinds of people and you've seen the process of transformation when they go from being normal to just going into this different world. Yeah,
absolutely. But you're thinking about the marriage thing, it's that concept. There's the concept of like, who's your whatever. Like if circumstances change and it's Bon Jovi, well, of course, I could have an affair with Bon Jovi. That's allowed because he's on my special whatever list they call.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So we'll try and get that meeting arranged, but I can't make any promises. But on the music front, because there's a way into music from Jailbait, I think, because there was a great song, because I saw the trailer and I heard the tune. And was that song written for your movie?
Are you talking about Earthlings, the Earthlings tune?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. No, that was just, we did write some original tracks for it with all the peoples associated with it. So Dave Ketching, who's in the Earthlings, contributed to this part of the soundtrack that we recorded out in Joshua Tree at his recording studio. He's now got a tequila, or what is it? The other thing, the thing that's made out of cactus. Anyway, he's got
a brewery.
Like the alcohol made from cactus.
Yeah, I don't know what the
or whatever it is. I don't know, whatever. He's got some kind of distillery in that really cool recording space. So that was actually probably my favorite part of making the project, was making the music. Like I just never.
Did you say you got to hang out at Rancho de la Luna?
Yeah, we recorded at the Rancho. Yeah.
Amazing. Isn't that's the Josh Homme, Arctic Monkeys place, isn't it? It's a great studio.
Right. Yeah. So we did tracks there. So we stayed out there for a couple of days, and that's probably one of the best experiences of being around there, is just being at that studio. There's like a piano and there's a bong on top of it, and you record, and then you open the door and then you just see cactus everywhere. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, that really kind of felt like, the music side is something that was a big part of the project. And my producer, Dana Anderson, aka Digital D, I think he's going by Ranch Hand now. He lives out in Joshua Tree. He was instrumental at bringing in all these really great musicians. We had Scott Reeder, who lives out in the desert, who was in the band Caius, which became Queens of the Stone Age. So all these guys just contributing music and putting their heart and soul into it. And you could tell it wasn't something like an actor where this is something that's going to get me to the next. It was just the joy of the music,
yes,
putting something together that's like, hey, this is great. And this, I'm going to give you this bass line. And so there was a lot of that kind of stuff. And then we had Pygmy Love Circus do some tracks. And that was really, really cool.
I can never tell if there's a distinction between the musical community and the film community that you were describing in Hollywood, because I don't think it's the case that if you're like a great band or if you're a great singer or songwriter, that one big break can make your career. Because I don't know what it is, but it's something like the consumers of music are so much more particular about what they want. You can't force things on them. Our MD Gary, of course, was in his band Hilton in the early 2000s, and they were doing a deal with Sony Records, a 2-album deal, and putting together the PR plan to get the music out there in front of the audience. because that's what you've got to do. You've got to just like blare the horns and be like, here's the new thing, everyone should listen to it. And apparently the person doing the PR said, I can guarantee that everyone will hear your record. I can't guarantee that anyone will buy your record. And so there seems to be this like reverse idea in the film side of things, that it's like, well, if the right person puts you in the right film, then you can just take it away. Yeah.
But I would also say that when people are fans of musicians, they're like super fans, and you can have fans for life, like, whereas, I think we're a little harsher on film stars, or at least we want to see them. We sort of want to see them fall, I was going to make one distinction about the England versus US and Canada, which my wife and I are observing, is that UK is big on shaming people. Wow.
Yeah,
I was just reading today. I'm a big fan of Alan Partridge, but Steve Coogan, he put his cleaning staff on the furlough program, and that's like shame. He shouldn't. And then when you read the article, it's like with his pool and his tennis court. It's like they would never. That wouldn't happen in North America. The shame or going up in a drone to film the shameful people going for a seaside walk when they should be at home.
What do you think that is? What's underneath that?
I don't know, but I remember also reading or listening to an interview. I think it was Gary Oldman. It might have been Gary Oldman talking about how in England it's like crabs in a barrel, and the second a crab almost makes it out to become famous, claws come out and pull you back down. And
yes,
whereas in America, I think we respect the process. Okay, you're on your way, you're going to be famous. We don't want to pull you back and take it all away from you.
Yeah, I got this sense that I don't know where the American dream's at right now. I think it's having a bit of a crisis of confidence, but I also think America has a remarkable habit of bouncing back, to use an Alan Partridge phrase. They always seem to restabilize. But the American dream it's like, well, we don't mind who wins because it could be any one of us. It could be me, but it could also be you. But the fact that it's like a level playing field, such as it is, that's why we respect the process. But like you say, the bandwidth over here is so narrow. Until about 10 years ago, we only had 2 channels. Not really 10 years ago, but you know what I mean? There's almost nowhere for anyone to get. So, yeah.
But you guys also have royalty. You either have the blood or you don't. Whereas America, we build our royalty.
That's right.
In America, you've got, the Tom Hanks is your royalty, or who's famous. That is
your 5th generation.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that over here we don't do that. In America, they count back the generations to see who is the most American.
Sure.
So we've been here since the 1800s. Like the Kennedys. That's a royal family, isn't it?
Yeah.
An example.
Don't they also, in America, they say, I got here with 25 cents in my pocket and look at what a success I am. People would love that. I mean, here it's like, I had 2 shillings. Well, you're lower class. Get away from me.
Yeah.
You only had 2 shillings.
But that's the thing. You're right. And it's interesting that you brought up Steve Coogan when you said that we really like shaming people. Steve Coogan noticed, he did a New York Times interview, black and white to camera. He said, we really enjoy Schadenfreude. That's why all of our comedy characters are tragic failures. Alan Partridge, Basil Fawlty, Captain Mannering, etc., etc. In America, you have sitcoms where the central characters are reasonably successful. I think we've said already at one point.
The Office.
Yeah, The Office is a great example.
For example, like Steve Carell, like I think they said that he was too much. They couldn't make him too much of a loser, or nobody would buy it.
Yeah.
So in America, like I think in America, we like the guy like Steve Coogan played him, where it's like I'm successful despite the fact that I'm a loser. Whereas the British Office, I think the place is always threatening to get shut down because of his incompetence, right?
Yeah, it's a very short-lived series by comparison. Yeah. Yeah. No, the UK office is quite brutal with just how bleak it is. Like I'm a fan of the series, of the UK series, and I think I go back to it about once every 5 years because it's so difficult to get through, because it's so real to us. The dim fluorescent lighting and the grim overcast weather, but if you watch more, I can't say more mainstream sitcoms than The Office, very mainstream. I mean stuff like, if you watch things like Frasier, if you watch things like Rules of Engagement, even stuff like New Girl, more recent stuff, everyone's like super rich, like not super, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm watching New Girl at the moment, to my shame, perhaps I should say. Everyone's my age in it, so it's sort of 27 to 32, and they just live in the biggest LA apartment you've ever seen. You never see any hint.
They're working at a coffee shop. They're working at a coffee shop.
Like Friends, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they and whereas like we talked about Peep Show, losers.
Yes, 100%, the biggest losers you've ever seen.
You wouldn't want to see those guys in America. You want to see people that are like, oh, he's got this bitching apartment and he's complaining that he just got laid off as an intern. And I Google, so my wife was watching some show, forget what it's called, but it's one of these, they have this thing, a faux reality show in the States where it's shot like it's it's real, but it's completely fake.
Is this like the Kardashians type thing?
Yeah, Kardashians, but there's other ones. The Hills was one. There was a show called The Hills, where it's just like it's shot it's like they took the concept of the British Office where you kind of wink to camera, but it's like, and they made it look like, oh, like my wife thought it was a real show, but then I'm like, well, let's Google that apartment that she lives in. Okay, so that's 3.2 million. It's 35,000 a month to rent, and she's an intern or a photographer. Which let's Google that. Oh, so she'd be making $500 a month. Do you not think that they're?
That's
and
insane.
I was like, look at that lighting. It's meant to look like, oh, we're just stumbling upon this restaurant conversation. But do you know how much staff is around to make that look the way it looks, to make it look effortless? So
it's almost like you're describing. There's actually a fake reality thing in American entertainment as such, and I'm kind of trying to maybe see what you think is going on underneath that. So obviously you noticed under our entertainment is the idea that we don't want anyone to get ahead, and if they do, we try and keep them back so everyone's at our miserable British level. Whereas in America, it's like they're so willing to see success that they will completely fake it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Why is that? I mean, it's a big question, but what do you think?
I just think like you're going back to the American dream. Like we want to know, we want to think, we want to believe that it's possible.
Yeah. That it
and
could
I think
be us.
everything, all advertising, all kind of everything that's, that you sort of believe in as you do your daily life is that's a reality, that, that today's your day.
Yeah. And so, and that's something you've really lived. There's let's get some of this some of the music stuff in, and then we'll go back to what the future holds for you and what you're on course for now. So because you've been around you've been around a really cool music scene, but I don't know about your actual music taste or how important it is to you. How much of a feature of your life is it?
Oh, huge. I mean, like I said, I'm just a bystander. I had a bass. I bought a Geddy Lee bass at one point. I tried to riff away, and I've had an acoustic guitar, but I kind of realized that's not going to become a career. So I'm just love being around the process of the music, and I love like the process of recording it, and I relate to musicians. Like I like the fact that they're always trying to perfect their skill, and it's something that they've got a drive for. So I respect the drive, and just I would in terms of doing film stuff, because that's something that I'm still have a passion for. I'm just newly inspired working on a film right now, Mancopolis, using the technology that I have. Originally, we were to be servicing a TV show, but that's been put on hold. So instead, we're kind of generating some content to build the tools. And I'm newly inspired of the whole process. And again, like music's a big part. What's the track that's playing? What's the track that's playing when I'm writing it? What's the track that's in the scene? And I think music's and editing to music, I guess, that's kind of music to me in a way. So I think for me that, continuing on that trend, and I think my tastes are pretty eclectic. I like, all kinds of, from R&B to metal to, all disco. I like everything. So I think, that's a big part is the music's music's always playing.
Is there a single record you can think of that's been really important to you in your life? And it might not even be for an obvious reason. For some reason, What's Going On, Marvin Gaye, always just goes straight into front of mind when I get asked that question.
I think the Sex Pistols, Nevermind the Bollocks, was a big album that really was influential to me. But again, like there's always like soundtracks of the moment. So there's summers where, that's the summer we were listening to the Tragically Hip, or we were listening to, that was the one where we all got into Marley, and that was playing. That was when that U2 album came out. I remember my brother got into the car accident. I can remember the U2 track. I was distracted because there was a U2 song that so music's always kind of been there. And one other observation of just about thinking about the music and the seasons in LA versus something that Canada and England shares. So in Canada, you have many seasons, right? You have the winter of your discontent, the summer of the Tragically Hip, the spring when my dad died. You have these kinds of things that you can kind of, when you pace out your life, you can kind of, they're kind of moments, and you can kind of look at your life as hitting those different, those different time notes. But in LA, it's just one sunny day after the next.
Yes.
So I remember there was a guy when I drove to work, and he had the license plate H8MYX, hate my ex. So I mean, he's never going to get out of. He obviously went to the DMV and got that plate. It's on his car. Every day he walks out with his coffee and thinks, oh, that bitch,
Yeah.
So there's a guy who will never get out of that headspace. There's no summer that I hated my ex. It's just one continuous sunny day.
I never thought about that. Yeah, so it's like, so I get it. I get what you're saying, actually. You associate things with the seasons in which they happen, and they become forever. There's a shadow of it when you go through that season again. I know exactly where you're getting at. And so
the music fits that too, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got a soundtrack and you've got a backdrop. But it sounds like in LA, that backdrop is just the same forever. And so Macaulay Culkin said that on Joe Rogan, I think. He says, you live in LA and you can just live there for 5 years without realizing it because it's the same season all year round.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Amazing. So anyway, that was just a little thought that I had about that. Yeah.
So you said you like Nevermind the Bollocks.
Yeah.
What was that something that your parents were not fond of, or was there anything that your parents didn't like you listening to?
Well, so the Nevermind the Bollocks was just something that was played sort of because it had naughty words on it. So yeah. Sort of a naughty. So it was just a surprise that music could be like that. I think my first 45 was Yes, Owners of a Lonely Heart. So I really like that sort of, those. I remember buying the 45s and we would listen in the basement. My parents certainly take notice of the music, actually. So I went through a big Grateful Dead phase where I went to a lot of Dead shows, which was really cool. That's a whole scene. I don't know if you guys were aware of it, but people going to Dead shows and dropping acid and watching the shows and touring with the Dead. I went to, not that many shows, but a few shows. I like that sort of counterculture lifestyle. So any music associated with the counterculture, I would get into. So I was into the Doors, and I'd read the Doors biography and kind of like, what else? Oh, there's Jefferson Airplane, the 60s. So I've always kind of been interested in those scenes. And then when I was in LA, I lived in Laurel Canyon, which is a famous place for music. So, the Doors lived there. That's where Love Street is. And that's where, so there's the music is sort of a vibe it's got a lot of history in LA. It's exciting.
What are, you're a parent, aren't you?
I am. I have 2 kids, yeah.
And how old are they, if you don't mind me asking?
7 and 9.
Right. And what kind of stuff are they listening to? Does that leave you completely perplexed, or are they going after your records, or what?
No, they pretty much listen to all this crap, like all the teeny bopper kind of stuff, One Direction and, but it is funny that my younger daughter picks up tunes that obviously we're listening to, and she'll mimic it pretty well. And you'll be like, wow, how did she sort of, it'll be some kind of a lyric that's really poignant, and she'll repeat it. And it's like, oh, okay, she's 7, but she's not. I don't think she's absorbing it. But that's,
it's strange to hear it coming out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah.
You're a film guy. What's the best sync moment, the best moment that music was synced to a film or a scene or even an advert? It's a big question, but yeah.
Yeah, let me think. There's been a lot of those that I've thought, they nailed it. I mean, Tarantino's pretty classic. So
Tarantino and Scorsese are the big two, yeah.
So when the guy's ear gets cut off and the guy's bopping away that was a pretty interesting juxtaposition.
Stuck in the middle with you, Steelers Wheel.
And now if that tune comes on, I can't get that scene out. You know what I mean? How the two get married together, and it was an eclectic kind of connection. But I think forever the soundtrack, and I've always liked The Sopranos when they had the John Cooper Clarke song on it. That was pretty cool, and I do like, although it's become kind of it's kind of a overused thing for the filmmaker to put his eclectic collection on a movie, but I still think that if it's done well, it's great.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be what do you call it? Just like a copycat, I guess. So it's a fine line.
I think directors. There's a few things with the Tarantino example that you mentioned. I think a lot of directors dream of breaking out a track that they synced to a scene. They made it big, and then correspondingly, an obscure artist always dream of the moment that their song will get picked by this unknown filmmaker, and then both those things will be launched into the stratosphere.
Yeah,
because now I bet you.
Oh, the other one is 9 Inch Nails and Natural Born Killers.
Oh right, yeah.
That was that Natural Born Killers had a lot of good stuff. So that's another thing that's cool about music. Like I didn't know about what's his name, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, the guy that does the Indian kind of chanty music. Yeah. That was in Natural Born Killers, and I would never have listened to that kind of music, but it fit so well because he had the Indian theme and they were demons, and that song came on, and now I listen to that. So now a new music that I like would never have gotten into it without that on that movie.
Yeah, no, it's magic when that happens, when a film comes into your life and then a choice that they made in production opens up this new avenue to you, new avenue of stuff that you would never have been listening to. And I think as well, to talk about those kind of directors, if Tarantino is very much a writer director, and if you're at that level, or if you're like Aaron Sorkin, who's one of the most fantastically successful screenwriters, or if you are, very likely Nora Ephron did this as well. If you're at that level, that you write the music choices into the script, and you'll get them. Whereas most
like
no, exactly.
The song plays that sounds like, or an actor that's like this guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what so much of the time you'll get these young filmmakers who think it's that easy because all their favorite films just have songs in them. And they'd be like, well, it's probably like a few grand to put it on or pay them. And then, yes, you'll get people coming to us and saying, can you get this? I've used this anecdote before on the podcast. Can you get this Paul Simon track for us? And they asked for $500,000 for an advert.
Sure.
So, but again, if you're at that level, like your music budget for a Tarantino film will be a multi-million, like just pot for all of the sync points. So,
but it probably works both ways. I can just picture the conversation between the two agents. Yeah. Hey, he wants to use this track, or he could use this track. This track is going to, get your back catalog out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's a negotiation of benefit.
Yeah. They can get the price down based on what it will do for your artist.
Yeah. Cause you could probably track, hey, when Y used this song, their career went off. You know what I mean? Like,
100%, yeah, and it does happen. A lot of people get launched by commercials in particular. We had a campaign we were in the running to be supervising all the music for. Obviously coronavirus got in the way, amongst other things. But we put this track forward by a relatively unknown artist called Anna of the North. And, it was met with a kind of, not sure, it's just not really grabbing my attention, next. And then last month, Apple synced it to their iPad commercial, and it's just sent her career into overdrive. And so everyone dreams of being that supervisor. There's a lot of questions to go through that you kind of already answered in a roundabout way. But one thing I'm particularly interested to go back for is to, I always try and get a word in for aspirational young'uns, people who are, looking for a career in film, in TV, and in advertising. And you went to the table, and played a few hands. And what's your advice for the young people who are going to go and do the same thing? People who after lockdown are going to go move to Hollywood and try their hand at the game. What would you say to them just to manage their expectations?
I don't know, because here's another funny thing. The first time I went to Hollywood, which was in 1994, okay, and I was broke. I lived in San Francisco, raised I had a valet parking gig. So I raised a bunch of money, drove to Hollywood. This is I was 21, drove my pickup truck to the top of the Hollywood Hills where you can see the lights. And, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to sleep in here. Of course, cops came and, gave me a ticket. And anyways, I ended up living in a trailer in Malibu. And, a few months into it, I was so impatient. Getting to your point about the what you should do. So I was on my way out of Hollywood. So I got an agent. I had an acting agent, but things weren't happening because I was there for 3 months. And I was like, what the hell? Why am I not famous? Yeah. So the last commercial on the day, I think my truck was packed up and I was out of there. I walk in and I booked a Lee Jeans commercial that played for a year. I made $80,000 off of it.
Whoa!
And I got flown first class from LA to Miami to Florida. It was shot at Disney World. And I remember thinking at the time, oh yeah, of course, this is what happens.
Now I'm it. I'm the guy.
Yeah, this is it. And then I was getting residual checks for like $1,000 in the mail. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this played, great, so of course, it took a good 10 years that, nothing happened until I moved back to LA, which would have been, so I moved back to LA in 2001 where the whole, the Jailbait, the USC thing happened. But all I'm saying is that I remember at the time, every 3 months, if something wasn't happening, I was moving to another city.
Yeah.
And I was just saying that it takes a long time. So to be patient and to don't worry about going back to fundamentals. So I was a terrible actor at the time. I didn't know anything. So I just, scripts, it just didn't take anything seriously. But I think if I dug in my heels at the time and if say you go to an acting class or something and workshop and I really stuck at it and thought of it as a craft and not something that was just going to be handed to me, then I think, I'm happy with my journey. It's been up, down, all around. I've done lots of stuff, but I just mean, if you're really serious about being successful at something, whether it be screenwriting, acting, directing, or all of them, I think you really got to realize that you don't know anything.
Yeah. Which
is really hard to do. If you told me that at 21, I would have been like, dude, I just booked, I'm the Lee Jeans guy. What are you talking about? I've made it.
Yeah. Whereas,
so I just think, go ahead.
Are you saying there's also a level of if you're satisfied with the craft itself? So if you're one of the, the actor's studio types who loves the profession of the theatre, then you'll have a rich life acting. And then if you become a star, you'll also be satisfied. But if you just set out for the stardom and you're not in the craft at all, and you're not in, you're not there for the love of the job, then you're less likely to have satisfaction.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think it's hard looking from an outsider to realize that it's a formula. Screenwriting has a formula, the acting craft is, these are skilled jobs. Whereas I think you watch a movie and think that the actors are just saying these things that are coming to them at the time. You know what I mean? You just think, I can do this. Like, this is stupid. Like, I should be a star because I can just, but then and then you'll see like a lot of if you follow like anyone's journey, you'll see there's been ups and downs. You can get lucky and then drop back down. But if you're really talented and have the drive, you'll come back up and be better the next time.
Yeah. And there's that, there are a few star cases where that happens as well. And they're like Mickey Rourke, he went down in quite a big way, didn't he? And then shot back up. Yeah. So it does happen.
Yeah. Or even like John Travolta. Geez. Like, like Tarantino kind of gave him a second career there. So, yeah.
So was he like persona non grata before Pulp Fiction, sort of after the 70s?
Yeah. So he was doing like Look Who's Talking To, and like he was just sort of like a cheesy actor. And then it's like, like it's like you picture someone like a whole burger thing. And like if Tarantino had selected him for the right role, you wouldn't be thinking of him as like, oh, the Baywatch guy. You'd be thinking of him like, oh yeah, that's Hasselhoff. Like, you know what I mean? Or another one is Burt Reynolds in Boogie Nights.
Yes.
He was on his way out, like doing crap. And then he thought that movie was BS when he was doing it.
Yeah. And how many times has that happened? Famously, Alec Guinness thought Star Wars was the worst thing he'd ever been involved in when he was making it. But
you're like, there's no trailer. I don't understand what I'm saying. There is, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And then, became fantastically wealthy because I think Sir Alec Guinness negotiated a percentage of all of Star Wars profits in perpetuity or something. So as his payment. Yeah. So he did all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we wrap up by you telling us the future, what the plans are? Because I know you've mentioned a bit about Hollywood, and then got into VR, and then you come over here to try and make things work with a few key clients. And then where are you going? What's the forward momentum taking you with?
Yeah, so we've got our technology being evaluated soon by the NHS. So for the medical business, that's a big reason why I'm over here, is because it's a huge market for us, over 200 hospitals. So it'd be a great revenue. And then on the film production side, so we've got this VR mixed reality camera where you can film your movie, put on a VR headset. And I'm kind of living it right now, where I have a motion capture suit that I can put on, and the camera can pick up my face. So I'm an actor in the scene. So I can act out the part and then play that in VR. And then I have a virtual camera. I can film that myself as the actor and get shots and keep repeating the process. And then I've got a few actors from Coronation Street tapped for this little proof of concept that I'm doing film. So they're going to act on Zoom, and then I'm going to put their performances on what I'm acting out in my living room. And it's sort of that concept during this lockdown of like, can you build something from home? And what I'm seeing, the trend with motion capture technology, is kind of like voiceover, where a lot of voiceover artists like, Hank Azaria, I believe, lives in New Orleans and just kind of puts his Simpsons characters, he just sends it over and they piece it together in Hollywood, but he doesn't have to go to Hollywood to do those recordings.
Wow.
Motion capture is kind of like that. You could put on my mocap suit. I could be directed by a video game company, and I could basically, put something in their pipeline without having to go to the studio. So I'm seeing that as a new trend. And I think that this whole thing happening and me still being able to build the tools, I see that as kind of the future. So I think that's where I'm going. And now I'm talking to some studios about how the stuff that I'm doing could fit into their pipeline. So similar how you guys with the editing and, the content on TV, and trying to still get those production pipelines and get that production values up so that it can be broadcast quality. I'm trying to do that with tools that you could do at home. And the way the technology is going now, it seems very possible. So
you think, I've spoken with a few people who are saying that we're entering a new era of working from home. I sigh because I just hate the fact that everyone's making prophecies about the new world, and we've been in coronavirus land for eight weeks. It's been nothing at all. So it's just frustrating me that people are starting to say, this is it now, this is us forever, 10 years of this. Anyway, point is, people have been saying a lot more working from home, but it sounds like you're saying that acting from home is going to be a new gig.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
I look at my brother, who's a banker. He's like on a plane every day of the week trying to close deals. I think that kind of thing's going to go away. Travel would be so crazy. So there is a new norm, but I think, shooting productions, having something that you're working on from home being part of a regular production pipeline and all that kind of stuff. I think it's all for the better. Yeah. This is the concept of working at home they had pitched to us a long time ago.
Yeah, and I like the idea of saving a load of money and a load of emissions by flying all over the place just to do what we're doing here, when we can now do it over Zoom. And why shouldn't we? You could argue that that it's taken a crisis to get through it, because it's effectively like taking an axe to the sort of the base of the airline industry, and then to the tech video companies go the spoils. So it's like that's the kind of rebalancing that looks like it's happening. But
at the same time, look at environmental, right? So what they're doing down in Deansgate where I live, walking up to the grocery store, they've now, because of separation, because of social distancing, they've closed off. Well, you live down there. They closed off a lot of streets now. So if you want to walk up to M&S, there's like many streets that no longer have cars on them anymore. And what's happening? Like now all that pollution is leaving. It's now the planet's cleaner. So when they say, oh, the world, the planet's screwed, well, the planet's healing right now because of all the less carbon emissions. So what are we going to do? Oh, well, let's get right back to, FTW, no, I think there's going to be some good stuff that comes out of this.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you there. And yeah, so I'm hoping for more video conferencing, because that would just, for me as just someone who seeks out new business leads, that would be a tremendous load off. If we could just do a few of these and have proper meetings instead of, for me in Manchester for ages, it's been, I'm coming down to London in 2 weeks. Can I possibly meet with you? Can you check with me nearer the time? Whereas now it's like, can you do a Zoom meet at 3? Yeah, sure. I can do that. So I hope for that. And I hope for more cycling. If you live in a city like this, it took COVID-19 for me to think I could cycle to the office in 20 minutes. Why haven't I been doing that? So
yeah, exactly.
And in my more wild moments, because I know nothing about policy planning or anything, so I'm just an average moron, but I still like to occasionally think, why don't they just stop all car travel in city centres unless you've got a permit, like you deliver stuff? And it's public transport.
Or an ambulance.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So who knows? But I'm certainly hoping that you'll see some. I hope this venture goes well for you in the new acting from home business.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess we'll leave it there, and we'll pick it up again another time. Maybe you could show us a demo of the suits and what you've made with it, and the VR production.
Love to. Yeah, cool. Love to.
Cool. All right. Well, I look forward to speaking to you then.
All right. Thanks, Greg.